So this is littlefreelibrary.org, and here are some of the options they have for libraries. I don't know if you can see the prices on some of these things. They're fairly expensive, but we're gonna make something similar to this one right here. So it's got a little shelf in there, can hold a bunch of paperbacks. I'm going to make it slightly bigger than this so it can hold a slightly bigger book. Now my dimensions, the footprint is going to be about 10 inches deep by about 17 inches wide. And I came up with the 17 basically by this piece of glass that I'm recycling out of this old cabinet door that I had. So my door dimensions are based on this, and then my door is dictating how big the library is going to be. Same with the height. My height's going to be 19 inches to the bottom of the gable, and then to the peak of the roof it's going to be 24 inches. Okay, so we're going to get started by breaking down our sheet goods. This is a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. This is for the base. This is the only piece of 3/4 inch plywood for the whole project. Everything else is 1/2 inch plywood. And I just happened to be building this all from scratch. So I had this piece of 3/4 inch laying around, and then I have a bunch of birch plywood laying around, 1/2 inch birch plywood that I'll be using to build the rest of it. So I'm cross-cutting, or I'm ripping with the track saw and the table saw, and then these pieces are small enough that I can cross-cut them, most of them, with the sliding miter saw. All right, so now I'm going to be cutting this back piece with the gable peak included on it, and there's a bit of a trick here. So let me back out a little bit. The side wall is 19 inches. So I have 19 inches marked out here. The width of this is 18, which I have marked out as well. And the center of 18 would be 9. And then my overall height would be 24, which I have marked out here as well on my center. Now here's the issue, or potential issue. So if you connect, I'm going to do this in a different color, if you connect the height of the wall and the height of your peak with a line, like that. I'm going to move the camera. Okay, so now I'm going to add my side piece on. And you can see, so the side piece comes up to this line as it should, but then when you put your roof piece on, the roof piece is going to go to the peak, and then it's going to go and it's going to hit the outside edge of your wall. Sorry, my hand's in the way for a second. So now you can see this gap right here. And that's because you're going to the outside edge of this wall and not the inside edge. So what you can do is you can just put your ruler here, hold it to your peak, and then draw your line. And you can see now how much of a difference that is. Now, if you're going to put siding on here like I am, and the plywood isn't your, or any kind of trim, the trim would cover it, or a siding would cover it. But if you were just going to leave this plywood, you would see that little gap there. So all of these angles I'm cutting with the circular saw. If you're making this with your child and you're not comfortable with the circular saw, you could do this with the jigsaw or the handsaw. The jigsaw is probably easier, though you might want to, clamp a straight edge to the angle, because it's hard to cut a straight line with a jigsaw. And then after we get that cut, I'm just going to use that piece. I'm going to trace it on the other end piece and cut it out the same way. All right, so I have my bottom piece and my left and right side, or right and left side, laid out on my table. And I am just going to glue and clamp these together now. And I'm just using Tight Bond original wood glue. Smear some on this edge. Get some on the other edge. And then I'll probably add some brads to it too, just to hold it before I get the clamps on. All right, so that looks good. I'm gonna lay that on my table. Left side. Right side. Slide this down to you more. Already have a clamp laid out. Give it a little pressure just to hold it. Sorry about all the landscaping noise out there. It's that time of year. Can't wait till they outlaw gas blowers. All right. And then maybe I'll just throw a 90-degree block on there just to make sure it stays 90 degrees. It's looking pretty good without even doing anything. So I'm gonna let that dry a bit. Once it sets, I'm gonna take the clamps off, throw a couple of brad nails in, and then probably attach the back and the front. So this is the inside of the gable wall, and I'm just giving it a sanding because I'm going to want to paint the inside before I assemble it, just because it'll be a lot easier to do that. So again, I'm just gluing the edges, and then I'm gonna staple it all up with the staple gun. The glue is more than enough holding power. The staples are just really to keep it in place while the glue dries. So I've been using the bourbon moth method of spreading glue here. I do have one of those silicone glue spreaders, and I really like it. It works nice. The only problem is it's not a pain to clean, but if you don't clean it thoroughly, sometimes what happens is the next time you use it, little tiny pieces that are way up in the bristles work their way out and then get stuck in your new glue up. So I don't know, your finger's just easier to use and easier to clean. So one of these 18 gauge staples or brads shot out the side here, and they're bendy, the 18 gauge ones. So I found the easiest way to remove them is to see if you can get a nail punch on the end of it and just kind of tap it till you can get the head proud of the surface, and then just pull it out with a small hammer. All right, so as I said, I'm making this library out of all scrap and recycled materials. And the size of this structure was more or less determined by the piece of glass I had, which came out of this door, which was on a hutch that I threw out long time ago, but I kept the door because I thought I might use the glass out of it. So what I did, and I'm going to change the camera position here in a second, is I laid the door out on the outside of the front of this box. So this way I could figure out the opening size I needed to cut, my door size, where the glass was going to set, and the reveal on the door. So I'll explain all that in a second. All right, so here's the front panel of my library, and I know it looks like there's a lot going on here, but it's really not that bad. So this yellow box here represents my piece of glass. So all of my measurements came off the glass. So the glass is going to sit there. Then the red box that's going around is where I'm cutting the opening of the library. So the glass is going to be 1/4 inch bigger on either side of the opening so that you don't see the opening. You know, you don't see the edge of the structure through the glass. Now these black lines here, these dark black lines, this is the style for the door. So the door frame is going to come up, it's going to go around, it's going to go around and come back down. And it's going to overlap the front of the library by about 3/4 of an inch on either side. So that's it. Oh, and then this line here on both sides, this is just going to be the piece of 1.5 inch trim that goes all the way up on each corner of the library. So the first thing I want to do now that I got my layout is I'm going to cut the opening out. And then after I cut this opening out, I'm going to, this is the outside of the structure. I am going to paint the inside white and also paint the inside of the library white just because it's a lot easier to do it now than try to do it once the front is added to the library. All right, so I'm going to cut this out, then paint. All right, so before I cut this out with the jigsaw, I'm just going to drill some holes in the corner just so it's easier to cut this line. All right, so I have my front of my library set up on some blocks just so that I don't paint my drop cloth. I've got some primer here. I'm going to give it a coat of primer, and then I'm going to give it a coat of gloss. Now, it's very, I don't know what the humidity level is right now, but it's pretty hot. It's in the mid-80s outside right now. It's about 79 in my garage because my garage is still in the shade. The sun hasn't moved around to the windows yet, so we're doing pretty good. As long as the humidity is low, it should dry pretty fast. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the inside of the library white. I'm probably going to paint the outside of the library white and do black trim. Okay, I guess one thing to be aware of is if you're going to glue your front on, don't paint the edges you're going to glue, otherwise your glue is just going to be adhering to the paint and not the wood. If you're going to use just mechanical fasteners with no paint, if you're just going to screw it or finish nail it or staple it, then it's probably a good idea to paint it just so you have some protection from the elements if water gets in there. But yeah, if you're going to glue it, don't paint it. So I'm not painting any of these edges or the edges on top where I'm going to glue the roof pieces on. All right, that's it for the primer. And I'll spare you the gloss finish coat. All right, so I decided that it would be easier to put the shelf in the library before I attach the front to the library. So this is the opening that I cut out for the door, and this is big enough to work for the shelf. So I need to trim it down to 10 inches, which is the depth of my library, and then cut the width after that. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right, so the shelf needs to be 17 1/8. All right, I'm gonna paint this shelf. This is gonna be top. This is gonna be the bottom, but because I have these dark pencil lines, and also there's a seam here because I actually
dominoed this together because I didn't have enough wood. So when I made that front panel for the library, I glued up two pieces together with dominoes in the middle. So I'm just going to give this a sanding to get rid of this seam and these dark marks, so it's just so the paint covers it easier. All right, so I'm going to mark out for my shelf now. A paperback is about 7.5 inches. I think I'm going to make the shelf 9 inches. So if I make it 9 inches, ½ inch for the shelf, that gives us another 9 inches for the top shelf as well. Now, since I forgot this was getting a shelf, I forgot to mask off where the shelf was going to go, and I ended up painting everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark out where these little cleats are going to go that are going to hold the shelf up. And then I'm going to just rough up that area, maybe just take a flathead screwdriver or my X-Acto blade or something and just rough up that area a little bit just so the glue has something to bite into. And that should be enough. I mean, it's a little shelf. It's not holding that much weight, so that should be good. And if it comes off in the future, it'll probably take the paint with it, and then I'll just glue it on properly. All right, let's go. All right, so what I ended up doing to remove some of this paint is just taking my chisel and scraping it, and that seemed to do a pretty good job at removing the paint. Now it's going to be hard to get a clamp on this, so what I'm going to do is when I put these side pieces on, they're going to push the back in, and then I'll put a clamp on the side piece on the end where I can get to it. All right, so I'm going to let this set up for about, I don't know, 15-20 minutes. This is a heat wave here in June of 2025 in New York, and it's pretty hot, so this should dry in about 10 minutes. All right, here you go. So 10:21 in the morning, 90 degrees, already feels like 98. And that is the temperature in the garage, just about 80, 79.5 or so. All right, so this is the bottom. Oh, you know what? Let me just clean up that paint. That's like a good 1/16 of an inch. So I'm just gonna scrape that off with a blunt chisel. Wow, that's a lot. And then, all right. All right, that looks good. Maybe I'll throw a couple of blocks on here just to weight it down a little bit. All right, so the glue on our shelf is dry. This edge over here is proud of the front, and maybe like a hair here too. So I'm just going to take my block plane and give it a few swipes to back this down. All right, that looks good. Just want to make sure these top corners here are good. If it's overhanging on the bottom a little bit, we can trim that up, but those corners need to be good so that the roof sits tight. That is feeling and looking pretty good. So let me get my brad nailer. All right, my brad nailer was already out, so I'm just going to nail it with some, sorry, my stapler was already out, so I'm just going to staple it. These are probably, I'd say these are 1¼ inch, which is plenty. This is only ½ inch plywood. All right, that should be enough to hold it till the glue dries. Now, got carried away with the glue. I just need to wipe this off. All right, I still have to cut the angle on here and paint them, obviously, but I just want to get an idea of how it's going to look. So we're going to be something like that, with a nice reveal on the top. All right, I like that. All right, so I need to find out what this angle is so that I can cut the peak of my roof pieces. And I have this little Saker gauge that I'm going to use to find out what the angle is. So what I'm going to do is kind of roughly figure out where this is going to go. I need a perpendicular line to hold it against. So I'm just going to use my square for that. Take it, hold it tight to this roof angle, match it up with my perpendicular line, and it's 29 degrees is the angle, if you need to know the number. But you don't need to know the number. You can just hold your roof board up here and just plumb this line up. And that's your cut. You don't even need to know the number, that's your cut. So you just line your saw blade up with that cut. So I'm going to cut mine on the table saw. Another way to figure this out too is with a bevel gauge. So with a bevel gauge, it's kind of like the other gauge. You're just going to, let's see, which is the best. I'm going to do it like this. So you're going to hold your perpendicular line, then you're going to put this on your roof line, and you're going to lock that angle down. And then you can take it over to your board and mark your line on the board like so. But you can also take it over to your saw and set your blade as well. So that's what I'm going to do now. All right, so I'm going to set my saw to 29 degrees. I have this digital angle gauge. This thing's pretty cheap. It's like 20-something on Amazon. Whoa. So I am going to set it 29.1 is close enough. I'm going to lock that down. But if you didn't have this, you just bring your angle gauge over and you just adjust your blade until everything lines up. All right, there we go. I'm happy with that. So I just got to paint these now before I attach them. This time I'll trace out the inside so I know where the glue is going to go, and I won't paint those areas this time. There we go. So 1/2 inch all the way around. I won't paint that.
So if you notice, I just have a little blue painter's tape there just to hold it together and act as a hinge, just to make it easier to set.
All right, so there's a nice reveal on the roof line. I'm liking that. All right, so now that the structure is all made, I'm going to move on to the trim and the siding. And what I'm going to use for the trim is I have this 1x3 here that I'm just going to rip down to probably about 1.5 inches. So this is a piece of oak, but this is 1.5 inches, so I'm just going to hold it here so you can see what it looks like. So my trim's going to go on all the corners like this. And then for the siding, I'm making these little clapboards. So this is a 2x4 that I'm ripping on edge. I'm ripping it 5/8 thick, and then I'm putting a little bevel on it so it looks like a clapboard. And I'll show you the side profile so you can see how it looks, and then I'll quickly show you how I make these. It's pretty simple. All right, so this is the side. I'm going to remove the piece of trim here. And now you can see these clapboards. I'll pull them closer. So this is just 5/8 thick with a little, I think it's an 8-degree bevel that I'm putting on it on the table saw. And I'm just gonna rip those all the way up. All right, so my workflow for making these is cutting all my 5/8 rips first. And then once I have all those cut, then I go and I tilt my blade to the 8 degrees, and then I put the bevel on it to make it into a clapboard. Okay, before I start putting the trim and the siding on, I just need to attach the roof so I know what angles to cut my trim at. So I'm just going to add some glue on the gable ends here. I'm going to flop my roof over the top. And then I'm going to just give it some staples to hold it while the glue dries. Throw that up there for now. Gonna find my reveal on the back. That's looking reasonably good. So I'm gonna grab my brad nailer. And I am going to stick a couple of brads just to hold it on. Get the brad up here. All right, so I have my 1x3 ripped down to 1.25 inches, and this is what I'm making my corner trims out of, and also the door trim as well. Now, originally I was going to make it the same all the way around. So one would be cut longer than the other and overlap so that I would have an 1.25 inches on each side. But what happened in the front here is if I would have moved this 1.25 inches this way and let the side overlap it so that it was the same on both sides, it would have left no gap here in the middle. So it would have been solid trim around the door to the corner with no siding. And I think even though it's only 1 inch, let me just turn this so you can see it a little bit better. I think getting those 1 inch pieces of siding in here will look better than just all trim. So that's why my corners don't match up. So when I get around to the back, I am going to make it even on both sides just so it looks nice. But for the front, I'm a little bit wider on the side than I am the front, just for aesthetic reasons for the front. Now, I know that was a lot of words, but I just wanted to explain why it was bigger on one side than the other. All right, so this is going to live here like that. Let me get some glue on it and tack it. All right, I got a little glue on there. I just want to get some glue on the roofline piece. This is going to go right here like that. And I'm just going to get a couple of staples in here to the top. So this one is going to be cut the same angle, just instead of cutting it this way, we're cutting it this way. All right, and then this should fit right here. Just get some glue on it and tack it up. All right, apologies for all the noise, landscapers. I got my trim pieces cut for around the door. So I'm just gonna glue and tack those on like so. Now, when you go to mark the length on these, it's important to make sure you overlap the side piece, because as you move this piece up and down the roof line, it raises and lowers the length. So make sure you have it where it needs to go, overlapping this piece, just like that. All right, got these marked. Go cut them on a All right, so I'm ready to start siding the back of this. I have all my pieces cut to length. I'm just going to change out my brads to these staples to like 5/8 staples so that it doesn't shoot through the plywood. And I'm gonna glue and tack these on the back. And the tacks, the staples are just to hold it as the glue dries. Tack in each corner. And that will hold it as the glue dries. Sorry, so the battery died at some point, so you missed part of the glue up, but it's just gluing it, sticking it, nailing it, gluing it, sticking it, nailing it. This little piece here I had to cut with the jigsaw freehand because it wouldn't fit in the miter box. And that's the last piece. And now we can move around to one of the short sides. Hey guys, so I don't know if any of you caught this in when I was putting that last piece in, but when I was making this piece, I must have picked the wrong piece up off my bench, and this piece is way wider. And I was wondering why when I cut the bevel on here, I had a little piece of reveal that I had to plane off. I thought I just might have changed my blade height by accident, but you know, you get so focused on what you're doing, you don't realize, you don't look at the bigger picture, and I didn't realize this piece is, you know, 3/4, ½ inch wider than the other piece, but I'm going to leave it. It's glued, it's stapled. When I put the trim up on the roof like this, you're not really going to notice it. This is also the back, and there's also going to be a little round vent that goes here to help keep the inside of the library aerated, to help you know, so moisture doesn't build up too much. But yeah, everybody makes boo-boos.
So here I'm using the table saw to cut a big rabbet into my door stiles, and this is where the glass is going to sit. It looks a little sketchy, and maybe it is, but I'm comfortable doing it this way, so it really didn't bother me. I didn't have a router bit big enough to cut this rabbet. Another way to do this is to cut a dado slot in your stiles, and then just sit the glass within that. Or you can just sit the glass right on the stiles and have it a little proud. And this is just chiseling out the corners to square it up with the glass.
All right, so I have the door being glued up. These were the pieces you saw me chiseling just a few seconds ago. And they're just glued in the butt joints. You could put a dowel, you could put a domino, but glue in the corners is more than enough to hold this together. And then the glass is just going to sit in this rabbited area.
Okay, so here I'm just adding, I think it's like a 3/4 by 3/4 inch piece of pine on the edges of the roof. And it's just to give the roof a little more depth, to give it a little more thickness so it looks a little better. So I'm going to put the two ends on first, and then I'm going to do the rakes and overlap the eaves with it.
All right, so these pieces are really small, and it was just way too risky to try and cut it on the miter box, and even doing it on the table saw with the fence, it was just too small. So the I forgot what it's called. The sled. That's it. It it was easier to do it with the sled on the table saw. So these pieces are just going to get glued in here, like so. And this is why I didn't want the one big piece of, or the two bigger pieces of molding that butted together. I think just putting this little bit of siding, even though it's only about an inch, it just makes it look a little nicer. Nice. All right. Glue these two sides up, and then we'll deal with the gable. Come on, get in there. There we go. Here's the short ones or the long ones? Short ones. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, so these are cedar underlayment. This is what you put under cedar shakes or cedar shingles, whatever you want to call it. And the reason why I'm using this for my roof is because cedar shakes are super expensive. This bundle here, get a sense of how big it is, was about $17. A bundle this size of cedar shakes is about $140. It's crazy how expensive they are, but this will be fine for the library, and this should be. I could probably do 3 roofs with this. All right. Okay, so I put a coat of paint on the fascia and eaves trim just because it's easier to do it now without the roofing in the way. And I cut a piece of felt paper, and I'm just going to throw a piece of felt on the top of here. Just because those underlayment shingles aren't the most waterproof. It has some through knots and stuff. So even though I'm probably going to pick the best ones I can, this is just an added layer of protection. So this just gets stapled on with 3/8 staples, and I'm just going to overhang it about 1/4 inch in the front and in the back, and then about an inch over the sides, and then just staple it on. All right, so I just have a couple of courses sitting on here just to see what it looks like. So I think I'm going to do about a 5-inch reveal, which gives me 3 courses of shingles. And then I'm going to do a 3/4 inch overhang all the way around. So I just set my combination square to 3/4, and I'm just holding it here to make sure I have a 3-inch overhang on the sides and on the bottom here. And this doesn't have to be perfect. These are cedar shakes. They're not perfect to begin with. So you don't have to get it exact. If you're within 1/8 of an inch, it's fine. And I am just going to staple these on. I'm going to staple them up high, and then as the courses get a little thicker as you get to the top, I might use the staples and the staple gun because they're a little longer. These staples are only like 1/4 inch or 3/8. All right, so let's get the first one attached. So like I said, I'm going to staple it up high. And 3 staples should be enough. And then I just want to, just gonna tap it in a little deeper. And it's a little bit loose down here, but the next course is gonna make it a little stiffer now. So Also, keep in mind when you lay these out, you don't want to, like I wouldn't want to put this piece again because this, let me turn the whole project so you can see it better. You don't want your seams to line up like that because then the water is going to find its way down. So what you want to do is, you know, put a piece like this, put a smaller piece, even that's a little too big, probably a little bit smaller like this one. And then you want to span that gap there so that the water doesn't run between them. And this is why you have underlayment too. So right now there's no shingle under this. So the water that goes between this gap right here is going to make it to the roof, except for I have the felt paper here. So normally when you're roofing a real roof, you put your underlayment, a course of underlayment, and then the first course of cedar shakes goes right on top of it like that so that there's no gaps at all. So my underlayment is just the felt paper in this case. All right, so let's pick our next shake. I think this one was good. We're going to measure about 5 inches up. Now this edge isn't the prettiest, and if I flip it over, that's ugly. So what I'm going to do is just get my block plane and give it a few strikes just to clean that edge up a little bit. Just to square it up, smooth it out. That looks much nicer. Actually, I don't like that chip. I'm going to change this shingle entirely. So this one looks much nicer. See this bevel here? I don't like that so much, so I'm going to hit this with the block plane. The cedar smells great. And that squared it up much nicer. Well, those are some shingles. Five inches. Staple the top. See, and this is already getting too thick for the little staples. Let me just shoot one out. I'll show you how big they are. So I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, these staples, they're small. These are probably, I'm going to say these are 1/4 inch, maybe 5/16 staples, so they're pretty short. So in my pneumatic one, I have, these are probably about 5/8, I'm going to say. So I'm going to use these. All right, so I marked a little line on here, 5 inches, so I know anything above that line, my next shingle is going to cover it, so I'm going to staple above that line. 1, 2. That's my first 2 courses. I'm going to do a third one over here now. So something like that.
All right, so I think you get the gist of that. And you don't have to do cedar shakes. You can do asphalt shingles. You can just paint the plywood and call it a day. Anything you want. So I did these 3 courses, and then I realized I need like a little ridge cap. So I made these little like I'm gonna guess they're 1.5 2-inch pieces. And instead of butting them together, I have it so one side overlaps the other, so water doesn't shoot straight down the top of the ridge.
There we go. Roof is all done. I think that looks great. All right, all we have is the door now. I have to put the hinges on the door, put the glass in the door, and then paint her up. Okay, so I'm just going to put an OG profile on this door just to give it some visual interest and also to help it from shedding water. These flat edges here like to hold water, and I don't want water sitting here, so this OG will help shed that. I hate painting. I thought my daughter was going to do this for me, but she disappeared. All right, I think you get the gist of it. Okay, we're on the home stretch. So here's my door. I've got the glass siliconed in already. It just needs to be cleaned. Got these little black hinges, and I just need to pre-drill for this. So I'm going to put these 2 inches from the top and the bottom. I already have it marked out. Just going to drill the screw holes out. Now I may mortise these in. We'll see how it fits, but for now I am going to surface mount them. All right, so one goes here. All right, I'm going to mount the handle too. Now I made a little bit of a mess up here. So this piece of glass covers this whole door, and it goes all the way to this edge here, and I should have drilled a hole for the handle before I mounted the glass, but I didn't. So it's a wood handle. I already have some 5-minute epoxy on it already, and I'm just going to, so we'll just let that dry. All right, so let's see how she fits in the opening. That looks good. All right, there she is. Get the shim out of here. Door opens nice. Let me just shim this up a little bit. All right, there she is. Now, my daughter wasn't around for the painting of the outside, but I'm going to see if she wants to paint something on the inside, maybe a whale or something. So we'll see if I get her to do that. But there she is. The only thing left now is to mount it and throw some books in it.
All right, so I'm just going to use a pressure-treated 4x4 to mount it to. I'm going to cut it so that it's about 3 foot high out of the ground. I'm going to set it in the ground about 2 feet or so.
Okay, just getting a measurement on the width here, 19.5. I want to put some brackets on here. I think I'll make the brackets about 16 inches. All right, so I'm gonna mount these brackets onto the 4x4, but I want to make sure they're in a straight line. So I'm gonna put a straight edge, some dirt here. Gonna put a straight edge on the top, and then I'm just gonna hold this up to it. I'm gonna pre-drill some holes. This is just a countersink, just so it doesn't split when I put those screws in on the toenail. Okay, and I'm just going to use some porcelain coated deck screws. Nice.
All right, so there we are, all mounted up and ready for some books. I'm gonna paint the post white eventually. I just need to let it sit for a few days for the moisture to dry out. You know, pressure treated is very wet, so you just need to let the moisture get out of there before you painted it. And here we are with some books in it. So I put about 5 or 6 books in there, and after about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, this is this is how many books were in there. So it's getting some use, and I'm happy. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing.